Well, Dad, weather's held out for you. Every time we've had a parade or we've done fundraising and things like that, it's always started out really bad, and we all sit there and pray to God that it clears up, and we've got beautiful blue skies for the end of our day today. Thanks, Dad.
Grandpa, I always miss sitting around the table playing poker with you guys. Whenever you were losing or winning, 12 o'clock rolled around, you were ready for bed.
I like chess because it was a way for me and my grandpa to, spend one-on-one time together, and I guess for him to pass on his knowledge to me, I thought that was really cool. And even to this day, I love playing chess. And going to the military, I played with all of my buddies over there and picked up a little bit from them, but everything I knew about the game, I learned from my grandpa.
Right down here, there's Crooked Creek, and back, God, this would be 30 years ago. He used to come home and fish, and then go back from lunch back into town and go to work. So he came home, and we were down there fishing already, so he came down to put in his rod, and it was June, it would have been June. Well, the creek doesn't open until July, but the state had the notice was behind a tree, and it was on the far end of the parking lot. So nobody sees it, and we've been here for years and had fished that thing all the time. So we're down there fishing, and my dad, we had fish on the bank, and all of a sudden, he hooks one and gets it on the bank, and the guy comes down, hey, nice fish, what are you gonna do with it? Well, taking it home. He goes, well, good, I'm fishing game, and he gave him a ticket. And he worked at the time in the fishing game office with the environmental guys.
I want to thank everybody for coming today. As the oldest brother, I've been nominated to go first. I will apologize in advance. My comments are a little bit more prepared. I'm not nearly as funny as the ones that follow. I was the oldest and the most serious, always. The most responsible, also the most handsome. But this week we had a lot of people in town. They're from out of town and have never been to Alaska before. And I know that many of us were searching for that elusive bear. So when I was preparing for today and thinking about what I could say about Dad, I had to seek the knowledge of probably the most inspirational bear I know, Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh, to quote him, says, "How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. Lucky we are to have a father whose life was dedicated not to the accumulation of things, but rather to a family and the things." If I can't get through this, it's your fault. Things that were important, his family and his community. Dad leaves behind a legacy of 48 and a half children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. With 10 brothers and sisters, I've been asked, do you ever feel that you didn't get enough love, that your love was divided? I have to say that's absolutely false. I can honestly say that he had a good partner, which is a good start. His wife of 65 years happens to be my mother, and all of our mother. But they were similarly situated. They both valued family. That was their priority. And service to the community came second. And I think that was because Dad knew he wanted to leave behind a world for his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren that was better than he came. He knew that we were going to be here for a long time to come. I do have to add to my speech and say that if there's any zero population growth people here, you probably picked the wrong party. The story, I'm going to try to say my story to the things that I knew before my brothers and sisters, because I'm sure they have lots of things that come while I was on to college and that. But my understanding of the story is that my dad was an altar boy, and he was the guy that always volunteered to go to the girls' school to be the altar boy. But I understand now that his motives weren't all that pure. That there was a little hottie at the girls' school that he was always wanting to see. So it worked out that he married that hottie and had all of us kids. Excuse me, I have to keep on track here. Dad, I could say, was very ambitious. He had 3 children before he graduated from undergraduate school. I hear the stories about Dad saying that when he was going to school, he was working 3 jobs. He worked at Kunzler, a meat packing house, where he says that he often took naps and studied in the back rooms. On the weekends, he worked as for a beer distributing company. Now, I have to say a side note, can anybody think of a more perfect job? Meat and beer. It's awesome. But he was also filling in the shortcomings of financial with his carnival business. That carnival business apparently became a genetic trait because it's still passed on to the kids and the grandkids. Thus we have today. So I can remember when I was a kid, my dad would take me to set up the fair rides and the carnivals. And I'm sure I was much more of a hindrance than I was help, but I never knew that. I thought I was the most important person to my dad, that I was really helping out. And I remember at night, the Columbia Fair, where my dad was born, was the most memorable to me, because I remember at least 2 times that after that fair, he would take me to Joe's Steak Shop. It's about a mile from where he grew up, and we would sit and have a steak sandwich. In case you didn't know, my dad likes to eat. Anyhow, we went to Joe's Steak Shop, and I felt like I was the most important part of that carnival business in the world. And my mom could probably tell you some stories about all of his prizes and everything that were stored in the basement of our house, and how they seemed to always have open boxes, even though us kids weren't allowed to go into the basement. But they always seemed to be open, spread all over the place. We're already past the Columbia Fair, so we'll come into a more modern time. Dad's priority was, again, said family. Part of that, though, his interest was in education and adventure, which, as some of you know, my dad took, I was about 12 years old, I believe. My dad took 7 of us, and he took us all out of school, and we took a trip around the United States for a full year. The name of the project was DARE, Discover America, Real Experience. And my dad was the coolest dad in the world. I remember the day before we left, he took all of our school books, put them in a box, and sent them someplace. We did not take books with us. And I said, that is the most awesome thing in the whole world. However, we didn't know that we were getting an education anyhow. When we were calculating distances between towns, if a car's coming the other way, where are we going to meet them? What's our gas mileage? And it's also, if you want to talk about the Grand Canyon, you go see the Grand Canyon. But it was also, that trip was about service. Dad, the American Cancer Society had helped our family very much with my older brother Paul, who's not with us today. But we did public speaking on their behalf. And again, it was my dad's thing about service, education, and making the world a better place. Oh, I forgot to tell you, part of my education on that trip was my mom and dad gave me a project that said I was supposed to go through newspapers and find all the positive things that kids did in the world, because back then the world seemed like a pretty terrible place, that you always heard the news about the bad things kids were doing. And for those of you who don't know, a newspaper that I was scanning, that's what we used before we had the internet. It's actually something you'd read it. Dad also loved rock hounding. When we were on that trip, we'd go up in the mountains. I remember Dad would take us out hiking up there, and we all had backpacks. I'm sure my backpack was never more than 15 pounds, but it felt like 100. And we got to the point that in our trailer, there was so many rocks in it that we had to take in and out of the camper every day before we could actually move in, that we finally got a storage unit. And to this day, somewhere in New Mexico, there's several thousand pounds of rocks sitting in a storage unit. Sound Off did a very nice tribute to my dad, and so I don't think I need to speak to his life of public service. I think the people that day did an outstanding job of pointing out how he was about service, how he was a man that you could talk to, argue with, but still respected you for your opinion when it was all over. He could differ with you, but agree to differ. And I think that's something that's admirable. His political life, I think the other kids are going to attest that his political life was a family affair, that we all participated in his elections. And I think everybody else, all of my brothers and sisters will agree that we all know how to put a letter into an envelope so that when you pull it out of the envelope, the first thing you read is Paul Fischer. I think they will also agree that they never want to lick another envelope or place another stamp on an envelope ever again. And sort of to sum up my part of this, I think my dad lived a life with very few regrets. However, in his final days, Dad spoke to several of us, and he spoke of one regret in particular. He told us that he regretted not teaching us kids to hug more often. So I think it's probably appropriate, knowing that Dad is looking down upon us now, if we all turn to the person closest to us and those that mean the most to us and give them a big hug. May Dad rest in peace.
All right, so 2 stories, and then maybe I'll get a little philosophical at the end. And these first 2 stories are very personal to me in my relationship with Dad, and just the 2 that most vividly stand out for me. So I think it was in 8th grade when Dad first went to Juneau for the state Senate session. I would go with him, and that became a tradition to spend the 2nd semester of school in Juneau and become a transplant back and forth. And one morning, in the kitchen getting ready to start our day, the AM radio was on, and I was just having this conversation earlier, I don't know that I've ever heard Dad make a commentary on music, specifically. But this morning, Bob Seger's song came on the radio, Shame on the Moon, and it just stands out in my mind. Dad, or through Grandpa as it may be, said, "Man, that's just amazing." And in that moment, I had a couple of thoughts. What is this? Who is this hip guy commenting on modern music? And then the other one was that he was actually hip and paying a little more attention to modern music than he'd ever let on before. And it is a very deep song, and a very nice song, but it always just stood out for me that Dad was paying attention, and that song just struck him somehow. And just, I made it something that we had shared. I don't know that if he ever thought twice about it. The next story, I meant to ask some of the nieces and nephews who their favorite superhero was, because this is kind of a superhero story. Grandpa and I were driving up to Anchorage, and before the roads were all so beautiful and modern like they are today, turning an arm in the ins and outs, going around the mountains, and as we hit the home stretch towards Anchorage, the meadowy part, if you will, and we're driving along, and Grandpa's in the passenger seat, and he says, "Oh, hey, check out that baby moose." And everything I'm about to tell you next happened in about 2 split seconds. I looked up, oh yeah, it is a nice little baby moose. And the next thing I know, from the passenger seat, Grandpa leans over and yanks the wheel. And I look up, and there's an 18-wheeler in the proper lane coming the other way. But there's a car in my lane trying to pass him, and we're about to head on. So in these split 2 seconds, the car is headed for the ditch. And I'm just, the deer in the headlights look. And then in the next instant, he yanks the wheel back and puts us right on the road as if that never happened. And part of me thinks that God showed up just in time and yelled at whoever he left to manage the day-to-day business, that's not what I told you to do, and lifted us to the side of the road and back. And in that moment, about another mile down the road, obviously, I checked my pants and thought I'd better put my seatbelt buckle on. And it's had to have been at least 10 years, neither Grandpa or I ever spoke about that story. And the first time we were all sitting around the table here at the house, and I said, hey, remember that time? And he still didn't want to talk about it, but just shook his head knowingly, because I think we both had a come to Jesus moment. And if there was ever any doubt in my mind about a higher being in that moment, I knew there was no doubt. And I'm just going to finish up on getting a little philosophical, perhaps, if I haven't already. I was driving down the road here with, I think it was Kevin, and we were observing kind of how simultaneously, nature-wise, the trees and the things, how they don't change, and yet they do change. Some of the side roads, they cut it down and chop it down every year or two, and then things grow up, and that changes. But, a little further back, these trees and things, they haven't changed, at least in my mind, maybe in 51 years. And I think the brothers and sisters will probably agree. I can point out to demonstrate my point here. These pine trees immediately behind us right here. I think it was the last time I was here. They weren't much taller than me, but they've changed and they've grown. On the other hand, all of the brothers and sisters, there's probably 7 specific trees on this property that have stood for 40 or 50 years as monuments to some of the most special memories we might have. The particular one, the little tree that stood outside when the trailer was parked back here, or the tree that's had different variations of forts in it over all of the years, and still has one that I would highly recommend not going on. And so I kind of been thinking about it, and with Grandpa, something did change quite recently, obviously. And we're not going to get to have some of those conversations and the joking around and all of the things that we used to enjoy. On the other hand, some things will never change, and that's those memories and the stories we've all been sharing over these last few days. And I would just like to encourage, particularly the older generation, continue to share those stories, continue to have those fun times, and pass them on to your children. And just like, Paul or Dad or Grandpa passed on his experiences and his entrepreneurial curiosities, to continue passing those types of things on and let your children learn kind of what the things that you enjoy, and let them find some of the things that they might enjoy. But I will just warn you, don't get any ideas about having ideas for another 20 years. You're too young, all right? Thank you.
One of them is, my dad was really good at spending time with us. And so he would come home at lunch and pick us up. And he would take us back into town to go fishing. And of course, back then, there wasn't the Anchorage line every Friday coming down here to fish, so there was actually fish to catch. And there was a certain rock that we knew about that was out there, and we would actually bet whether we'd get a silver or a humpy, or a red or a humpy. And he would come and drop us off, and then during his lunch hour, he'd come down and fish with us. And it got to the point where at the end of the day, we would take our fish that we had at lunchtime out to the car. And all these people that are on the bank, and even back, 30 years ago, there was quite a few, and they saw us coming out. And at that time, we're 15, 16 years old. And we have all these fish on a pole. And so
obviously we're not stupid. We don't want to give away our fishing hole. So we kept looking back to make sure nobody's following us, we thought. And we'd go down to this fishing hole, get the second load of fish to bring out. And as we're coming back out, we would see all these people that all of a sudden had shifted their fishing hole enough time so that when we left, they would fill our hole. And that, but it was one that was the type of things he would do. He'd come down on his break. and spend his time with us. And there's one other that I want to hit. We were talking about, Tom brought up the act of God, I guess is what you would call it. Down in the Nilchik, we were clam digging, and back then, if the tides went far enough out, it was a really low tide, there was in the Nilchik, there's a sandbar that comes up. And it's very rare that you can get out there. So we knew the clams out there were a heck of a lot larger. You know, I mean, you're looking at 8-inch clams versus those little 6-inchers. And so we went out there and we forgot to watch our back, because as the tide comes in, obviously it's filling on the back side of that sandbar, and we forgot about that. And so all of a sudden we're looking up, and we got buckets of clams were coming out, and we had to wade through that. And I got lucky that day, my boots had holes in them. And so as we're going through this water, it kept creeping up, and it's getting warm water in my boots, but my dad had hip waders, and so he's nice and dry. And as we're going in, he started getting tired, and he goes, "Hey, I'm going to take a break on this rock over here." And any of you that fish know on an in tide, it digs out the sand on the ocean side. So he took a step and just sank up to his neck, and that just filled his boots, and he's freezing. And I'm like, oh, because I'm already warm, and it was a point where, it was up to me to help him. And we got out of that mess, and it was one of those that, because I was only 16, 17 years old at the time, but we made it through that. And at the end, it's one of those that we don't talk a lot, but it's one of those times that the guy upstairs kind of reached out and said, "Hey, it's not your time yet." And we got out of that pretty good. But it was something that we had and could share back and forth over time. So there's, how he got out of trouble one time. The other one is, one last one, because I already told these guys over here. Down here, there's Crooked Creek. And my dad was working at the time in the same office as Fish and Game. And they told him, "Hey, Crooked Creek opens up June 31st or 30th. And so my dad was like, "Hey, why don't you guys go down there and fish, and I'll meet you at lunch down there." So we take our bikes, we go down there, and we're fishing. And I mean, we're fishing 2-3 hours. We have fish on the bank and thinking nothing of it. My dad comes down at lunchtime, and he starts fishing, and he catches one and gets it on the bank. All of a sudden, guy in uniform comes out of the woods, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing? You got any fish?" Yeah, they're over here. So he's talking, and he's like, "Oh, that's a nice fish. What are you going to do with it?" "We're taking it home." He goes, "Well, that's good, because you're getting a ticket also." It was Fish and Game. The creek down there actually doesn't open until July 1st. And so for the rest of his time working with the state in there, they gave him heck because they'd come in and he got known as, down here stealing fish, and they would give him a hard time. But we also noticed that they didn't come out until there was an adult there. And so from there, you got 3 of my memories and things like that. But I believe the next one is Dave.
Before we came up here, Uncle Bob was visiting at my mom and dad's house, and he brought up a couple memories of when they came up and visited. And I distinctly remember this yard here, and we had a garden up here, and we had a picture of all of our fish of the day, and I keep looking back on that picture from time to time because it was like 15 humpies that we were all so proud that we caught because it was just a fish to us. But as we got older and know that that's the trash fish, you know, I look back and say, who would even eat those things? You know, but we were proud of them. And Uncle Bob brought it up that his daughters remembered that fishing trip and how great that was. One of the memories that I hope I'm able to pass on to my kids and grandkids is the time that we had gone to Disney World. And I just feared roller coasters. Andrea and the kids would always my daughters try to get me on a roller coaster. It's like, there's no way in heck I'm getting on a roller coaster. Why would anybody in a sane mind put themselves through that? And we got to Disney World as a family trip, got kind of separated and came back, and all my kids were saying, you know, this is after Dad had a heart. I don't know if he had the pacemaker in or whatever, but he had a heart attack or something, and the kids were telling me, well, Grandpa went on the roller coaster. Surely you can do it. And I'm thinking, holy crap. Are you sure it was my dad that went on that thing? And so I can distinctly remember, I said, I'm not going on that thing. So Dad, he got back in line again, and I'm watching them because at this roller coaster, it shoots you out from standing still, and it just shoots you with so much force that you get up this hill instead of the clickety-clack thing. And I'm just watching him, fearing peer pressure here, and that thing shot him out of there, and it's like, holy crap, there's no way. So then he comes back and says, yeah, that was great, and of course, peer pressure. I guess I got to do it too. And as we're going by, it says, well, if you have heart conditions, and I said, Dad, this is you. We should not be on this. And that was my first roller coaster, you know, and it kind of like, the guy just put family first. And as I watch my grandson, you know, it's like someday maybe one more time riding a roller coaster with him. That's enough for me though.
I'm not happy working here, but it did teach us a lot because if you don't work, we didn't get paid. Kids today sit on their butts on the cell phones at work, do whatever, you know, and they don't learn the hard way. And they still get paid. They don't have that work ethic like my mom and dad taught us. Even though I didn't like it, now that I'm older, I really look back and thank them for being hard on me and, you know, giving me that chance to have that kind of work. My big dream growing up was to have 50 kids. I wanted my own orphanage. It never happened. I went out to upstate New York to a convent, and I had 4 triplets with autism that I was in charge of. Fell in love with them. You hear horror stories about the nuns. And this one nun, you're never going to get through to these kids unless you physically shake them and do this. And I said, no, I work through love. You'll never get through with love. I said, well, I had my brother, Paulie, who taught me you work through love. Otherwise, I can't be working here. And she goes, well, then maybe you don't belong being a nun if you can't discipline these children. So I called the nun in Alaska, crying, what do I do? She goes, why don't you come back to Alaska? You can help me do the Joy Community with the handicap. And if you still hear the call, we'll take you on. I just have a love for babies. I don't know, I'm a magnet. Every baby that cries, I'm just drawn to them. So I worked for the handicap and loved them. Got joy out of my work with them. I volunteered for Special Olympics, which very, very a lot of joy in my life working with them. And then I met my husband on a retreat. I had 5 sweatshirts on, and he came up to talk to me. Hi, I'm Joe. So I'm really shy, but I have 3 good-looking boys from the marriage. I'm very thankful for all 3 of them. And the thing that I remember most from my dad, he taught me how to make the best brittle, and the recipe will go to my grave. No one will get my recipe. Dad, and it's between me and my dad. So try to get it from me. It's not going to happen. I'll make it up for you. All right. Let's see. Mary. I was lucky and got to be with Dad through the whole thing. And for those of you who are not in family, to the end, he was so appreciative of the Kasilof people and those who helped him with his elections. And he could come up with names until the very end. He was very proud of that last election. I think it was even the last 2, when he was, I guess, were saying, Dad, maybe you've had enough. Are you going to make it through this or not? And the community came together, and the people, I see quite a few of them here, who put up the signs, who went out and did stuff for him, and how much he really appreciated. And that changed his whole outlook, kind of, just to know that you guys were there, you helped him through this and going. So it's cool to see from back when we were yay high and sticking and licking envelopes to being able to turn it over, and you guys came in and helped him out. So even in his last days, he was giving some names out that I'm like, okay, who was that? And I don't remember that one. But today I saw a couple of them here, and it's like, now I get who he was talking about there in those few times. And it just made a big difference for him. So for you guys to know, he really appreciated that. And then for memories, he's got one. I was playing basketball, and that was something that I really appreciate about Dad is I didn't always do the dresses and the girl things, and it was more cool to be out fishing, hunting, swimming. I loved Alaska. And so he was very supportive, went out and played basketball, and there was one game in particular, big game for us, Concordia state champs, and we were going against them, and we're warming up, and it's time there's still quite a few kids at home, so to get a ticket to come out was a tough one for him. But I looked up from the warm-up, and I can still see him coming down the bleachers. And I never did this before, but I jumped over the chairs, ran up the bleachers, and had a nice hug. So at the end, when he was saying I didn't hug enough, that was one hug. It was like, Dad, I will remember that hug for the rest of my life. So, him and basketball. Yes, my turn.
First was, forgive me if I don't remember exactly which nephew it was, a baby laying on the floor of in the living room of this house, flat, 2 feet, Mary on the floor laying flat, enticing the baby that was just about on the verge of learning to crawl, encouraging. And I thought, my God, the patience. More recently in Arizona, I watched Mary helping Dad and, helping him do everything. And I thought, my God, the patience. So I just want to thank Mary for her patience. And if I ever had kids, I would love for her to be their teacher.
I guess the best thing I can give to my dad, get from my father, to pass on to everybody, is his work ethic. That he always believed in us, that we could do anything we wanted, and they would support us 100% of the way. The other thing I remember is the day I got engaged to my husband. And we're sitting at the house. My mom and dad already knew we were engaged. But Kenny had to ask because it was proper, and that's what we do. We're sitting on the couch, and my dad is sitting over there looking at me like, it's time to go. We're going to bed. I'm touching Kenny saying, do it, do it. I think it was about 10 o'clock, and we finally were asked, and we were finally engaged. My dad just looked at me and gave me the biggest hug and said he knew it was coming, and he congratulated us. I just pray to God that Kenny and I can keep it together as much as my mom and my dad did, and that we're passing that on to all of our kids. You can't have more love than my mom and my dad. It's ours. Thank you.
Today, right now, I got Lincoln Reagan with me, and I'm gonna try to keep it together too, but I was so proud of him. So Mary called and said, you know, it's time to come see Dad. And I was gonna go by myself. And Reagan goes, and like he says, I'm going because Dad, they love Grandpa. You know, he was everything to those kids. And I was so proud of them, they said they're coming. So we're going to the funeral again. I'm going to go by myself. No, I'm not. Lincoln's coming. Reagan's coming. And then the whole family, first of all, they just wanted to be here to see the Fischer thing going down. That's all they talk about is Jonah graduated last night, and he was going to miss graduation to be here to see this. He said, I can't wait to see all the Fischer in one place, because we only get samples every now and then of all of us together. And their thought of all that in one spot, I mean, they're ready for it. So I'm going to try to just go over a couple things. Michelle posted on Facebook after Dad passed away. She said that she always thought that she was Dad's favorite. And the thing is, you think about it, he made everybody feel that way. You know, everybody felt like they were his favorite. So I told her she was, but the truth is he really made people feel good. And what's kind of different, I think, with me and Matt growing up, and maybe even Tom to a certain extent, was we were at the end of the kids. You know, so the experience of the older kids, they got to travel the country and they did things Dad's one way. We kind of came at the end where it was the political life and things were a little different. So we got to experience things from a different angle. And, you know, Dad taught us a lot of things. You know, we were at the bakery and stuff, I know that. And today I find myself being Dad, because Dad used to always go around the bakery and those bags are always on the floor. And he'd say, that's a nickel. That's a nickel. He's always telling us what the value of everything on the floor was as a nickel. And so I find myself at work, I'm pretty sure Reagan knows what everything costs as we're building, because I'm telling him what can of paint costs, what this costs, because you kind of get in your head, you're always, you know, the value of stuff. And Dad kind of taught me that. In my last conversation with Dad, one of the things he said, I came up with a lot of crazy stuff. He said, the difference between me and you is you do a lot of it. So I felt kind of good, but I kind of thought that maybe that wasn't a good thing either. So the other thing with Dad kind of stories is, I don't think Dad had a wristwatch. He had an internal clock called the food clock. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And he never missed them. I mean, I knew as a kid, if I'm going to go with Dad and do something, I'm getting lunch. You know, we never missed. And today with my kids, we go somewhere, I do what he did. You make it special. You go find food. You make it an experience with you. And I think I do that with my kids today, but I learned that from him. I think what I got from Dad, and this starts with Michelle told me the one day, she said, Michelle met Dad when she was 15, so she's 47, 48 now or something like that. She says she only had one ever serious conversation with Dad. Okay, one in 30-something years. And I think to Dad, humor was a bridge. You know, maybe it's a way it was a way to get to people. And I think for me, maybe it's a way you kind of hide insecurities too. Is through humor, you can, you know, bridge that gap with people and be able to talk to them. And it's just the way he taught me to do that. And my kids always make fun of Grandpa because he always says the phrase, gee whiz. You know, he's always, gee whiz. So around the house, that's what they do. All the time they're making fun of Grandpa. Gee whiz. So he taught us a lot. I mean, with Dad, it was, from the business standpoint, what I think I learned from him and was take advantage of opportunity today, worry about the details tomorrow. Just jump in and figure it as you go. And I think too many people in life, they always want to plan, and they never do anything. I think he was the opposite, man. He did it, and he kind of figured it out as he went. And I look at how does he ever do things? As a kid growing up, 9 kids, how did Mom and Dad ever make Christmas happen? I mean, they never disappointed. I mean, coming down them stairs in that house, and you saw that big old Santa tree sitting there and presents, and it's just, today I try to run my family. I said, man, how did they possibly do it? So to both of them, they're amazing. That Mike kind of touched on, did we ever get gypped? I mean, hell no. I said, we got everything. We always had somebody to play with. I get some of these kids got 1 or 2 kids in their house. I mean, that seems kind of boring. We had somebody all the time. So we really enjoyed that. So anyhow, I mean, Mike Fresh, the family's getting here, and they just really wanted to see everybody. So everybody's got to stay till at least like 6 o'clock-ish. So they'll be here. And again, I think the last thing for me here is people ask, is when people die, are they present? Are they here? And I'm going to have to say yes today, because I tell my kids all the time about growing up in the Catholic Church. There's a lady who yelled/sang very loud up there. And she'd sing the song, I'll raise you up on eagle's wing, really loud. And they played that today, and I said, he's got to be up there just laughing his butt off. Of all the songs in that book, that's the one that came on. And I was I was holding it together in church till that hit. And I started crying. I said, dude, come on. But, all right. So I think Matt's left, I think, right? One of the things that's kind of being with Dad his last few days, Mary, the hot dogs and that, it's false advertising over there. Dad's last request for food was hot dog and Pepsi. And go back to the Juneau days. And Dad would always say, hey, Ed's coming over for dinner tonight. Make some hot dogs. So we thought Dad liked hot dogs, but I'm kind of rethinking it now, because he also liked the cafeteria at the Capitol. And he was probably eating dinner there and coming home to the hot dogs, but then when that was his last request for food was a hot dog, okay, must be something real here that he actually liked them that much. Kind of like what Chris saying, it's different. We had a different experience. When you guys are talking about hunting and fishing and all that, it's like that, I don't know that guy. We didn't do that. We did the adventures. This used to be the onion patch. I have no idea how we had 50 pounds, 100 pounds of onion sets that all of a sudden Chris and I were planting. And then we were at the end of the driveway selling. And no idea where that started. I have no idea. One day I'm watching a video on how to make kettle corn in the living room. And all of a sudden we're in the kettle corn business. I have no idea where pull tabs came from. All of a sudden we're in the pull tab business. All these different things that came up, and it's just kind of the trophy business. I have no idea where that came from. But these things come up and we keep going on, and I guess, I kept being with Dad doing them, and you just look at all the different things they taught us to do. And one of the fun things we do at school is all the different careers you had, all the different jobs you've done. And it'd be scary if we looked across our family. All the different things that we've done, all the different skills we have. Growing up out here, I don't know if he taught us or it was just necessity that we know how to fix anything. Because there wasn't money to fix it at the mechanic, so you either go fix it or it's not going to happen. But really when it was nice being with him in the end there, because it is, today for me was easy in the sense of, I know he's in heaven. Was easy. So, he's in heaven, getting to be there when he passed away. It was easy. He's an angel now, he's up there in heaven, and this is for us, and he's got the nice job of watching our kids and our grandkids grow up from a different view.
My name is Ruth Lawler. I'm not a member of the Fischer family, but I really enjoyed all of the stories. And I'd like to tell you mine, just about being a neighbor. We live down the road a few miles at Johnson Lake on Crooked Creek Road, where some of you fished. And we have a runway down there. But before I tell my story, I would like to relate to that one on the Seward Highway, because it was 1971. We lived in Anchorage at the time, and I was driving with a lady named Jean Soundy from Anchorage down to Seward. Her, a friend of ours, Ivan, had a boat there, and her husband and my husband were out fishing on it. So we were driving down this night to pick them up and bring them home. And it was icy. I was pregnant with my second son, who was born. Anyway, Jean was driving, Toby and me. Toby wasn't born yet. And it was icy. And we were going up a hill. I think we were past the turnoff for the peninsula, headed for Seward. Going up this hill and hit a patch of ice and wound up in the left lane. Coming down the left lane was a semi, tractor, trailer, big rig. And we were like 2 or 3 truck lanes away from this. I closed my eyes, and when I opened them, we were back in the right lane and the truck had gone on. And I have no idea. It was like God took our car and put it back in the right lane before the truck would have hit it. And that's the same story that we heard before. So I know God is out there working. So my story goes, Paul was a state legislator, and he was in charge of our district. And we had a runway put in 1976. We moved down here from Anchorage in 77. And we had amphibious floats on a Cessna 180, and we could land on Johnson Lake with the wheels up and drive over to the shore, put the wheels down, and then drive home on the runway. And it was really nice. There were a lot of float plane pilots that used Johnson Lake at the time. And suddenly the state legislature decided to close a whole bunch of lakes in Alaska to float planes. Well, our neighbor, Lindsey Williams, our runway ran through his yard before it hit the road and into the parking lot at Johnson Lake where the planes took off. And Lindsey called Paul in Juneau, and that very same day that Paul learned about the closure of the lakes, he took Johnson Lake off the list. The other lakes were closed, Johnson Lake was open. Now that's a legislator. I know there's a lot of people in government right now that are crooked. They make our country look bad. But back in the 70s, we had more like Paul. Paul was interested in helping the people, and that's what he did. And we just wish that there were more people like Paul that were in the government, because we appreciated his honesty and his integrity. Everything about the man was very pleasant, and it was really nice to hear the family stories about him. But I thought that I would like to tell his work was very important to a lot of people. So thank you.
When my dad left the legislature, I remember I asked him, I said, what was the most important thing you worked on or passed while you were in the legislature? And I thought his answer was really interesting, that he said, it's not the most important thing I passed, it's all the stuff I kept from getting passed. And he spoke about how, some senator whose wife's part of the garden club, and they'll bring in a piece of garbage legislation, and the other legislator goes, hey, Paul Fischer, make sure this gets buried and never sees the light of day. But he had to submit it because it's his wife, of course. But I thought it was really interesting that, our government's supposed to move slowly. And he saw that as part of his job too, to make sure that things move slowly and with direction and determination. So it sort of goes right along with Betty's story that I just dawned on me.
So I won't be sending thank you notes with my signature on it. Paul would not agree to one without his signature. One of the things he did and loved doing as a senator was the high school students who made the honor roll. Every semester, he sent those kids a letter encouraging to continue on and congratulating them. And every single one of them was hand signed by him, not by some mechanical thing. And he really took pride in that. And let's see. I thought of things as all the kids were saying stuff, and now I can't think of any of it. But I know that he'll be sorely missed by a lot of people. And of course, the family's number one. But again, I'd just like to thank everyone who contributed to this and to all the other things in his life that you were involved in. He's really a shy man. This is something that most people don't realize, because Paul goes up to people and starts talking right away and all. But it was because he realized as a senator they wanted to talk to him, but were shy also maybe about coming up. So he would start a conversation, and of course if it was about Alaska, forget it, you were gone. He would be hours talking about Alaska. He loved Alaska. And just sorry he wasn't here when he passed away, but it's something for the wanted to thank you, everybody.
I feel like he made our childhood very magical for all of us. I remember going and delivering pool tabs as a small child and going into all these dark, creepy places that I would never see. Or we'd go down in the basement and all of a sudden there's a box of toys that we would never know existed. And if you're good, you get one, maybe two. And it's always something you would never expect. He always made us feel special. I mean, look at how many people are here today. We came from all across the country and he brought every one of us together. And I think we're all so lucky to have had him, and he's made a huge impression on this world. So we love him. Thank you all, everybody too.
Okay, so we all know when we play poker with Grandpa, we'd play usually after dinner time, and he would always get to the point where his chips started slimming down, and he's like, okay guys, it's time to go to bed. Because even after that, he'd go to bed, and the next day he'd be like, I'm a great poker player. You guys never beat me. It's because he always went to bed. Okay, who's next? Okay, I'll go again, I guess. So in the summertime, when we came up here, he had a bunch of pool tab deliveries to do, and he'd always come up to me. He was like, hey, you want to go with Grandpa to go deliver pool tabs? I'd be like, I don't know. There's a TV. It's real nice. He'd be like, we can go to get a Baggio sub from Jersey Subs. It's like, okay, let's go. And every single time, that was me and Grandpa's sandwich. Okay, come on. Anybody else?
Going off of what Keith said about poker, our grandpa was someone who really loved to play games, especially with his grandchildren or even children if they join. And I don't think anybody appreciated that more than me. I just loved anything I could do with him. One of my favorite games to play aside from poker with Grandpa was chess. Anything I know about chess, I learned from him, and it became one of my favorite games to play. And we would turn it into a bonding moment between me and him, where he told me stories of his children and growing up with them, lessons that he passed on to them, while also teaching me how to play one of our favorite games. During playing, he would also bring up some of the memories that he had when he was in the military. And hearing stories about that, I guess, kind of shaped my thought train into
I want to be just like him, so I joined the military. And on my trips overseas, one of the things that I would do to pass time would ask my fellow guys if they would play chess. Very seldom would I find someone who actually knew how to play the game, but when I did, anytime I'd be playing with them, all I could think about was sitting cross-legged on the table, on that little coffee table in there, while he was bent over in his chair, teaching me certain moves like, I don't know, castling, which I had no idea how to actually use it. And I still to this day, I couldn't figure out how to use it properly. But just sitting there with my guys playing chess and getting to have that memory of, you know, being cross-legged, starry-eyed on the floor, listening to his stories of his time in the military and some of the funny stories that he had, and then putting it together with my life and experiencing somewhat the same experiences that he had. I'll never forget it, and I'm very thankful that he would take the time to pass on those memories to us, and in doing so, I think that's a way that he still will live on throughout the rest of us through those certain memories. And even if we all don't have the same stories and the same memories, as a collection of a whole, we come together with a book of his life. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that he can give to anybody, because now we can all have the same, you know, understanding of who he was as a person, but each one of us has a specific memory that's different than everybody else's, which makes us stand out and which makes him stand out to us in a different view than everybody else has. And I think that's one of the greatest things that he could have ever given us.
The oldest grandchild. And I'm actually getting to meet a lot of my cousins for the first time this week. It's been a really cool experience. So I'm not going to share a memory, but well, I guess it's kind of a memory. But one of the things that stuck with me over the years, I lived in Alaska till I was 7, so I had my early years seeing Grandma and Grandpa all the time. We moved to California when I was 7, and I came back during the summers to see my dad. He was running Photo Quick, and so we came up here and spent the summers here with Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Mary and all sorts of adventures. And I remember I was about 10 or 12 when I came back, and you know, growing up in California, those crazy Californians and their ideas, and we were talking politics, and I was influential or easily influenced at that time, and still kind of developing my own political views. And Grandpa would just chuckle, and he'd just sit there and ask me questions and be like, okay, well, you think that, well, what about this? And, well, what about this? And play the devil's advocate. And I just worked myself into a corner. And it really taught me to kind of sit back and think about the things that come out of my mouth, and why do I believe that? And what's the other side of the coin to this? And what is the bigger picture of it? And it's something that I'm always going to carry with me and hopefully pass on to my girls.
So I feel like we all, the grandkids, probably have memories making kettle corn at some point in their lives. So I'll share one of my favorite grandpa memories. When I was younger, I got to take a week off of school, and me and my dad, we went up to Vermont with Grandpa to do the Vermont State Fair. And we met up with one of my grandpa's best friends, Ray. And for those of you who don't know Ray, it's pretty much just a clone of Grandpa, pretty similar. So my grandpa, Ray, and my dad, that's already 3 scarily similar people. And of course, every story, it involves food. I know we stopped at the local store, and they grabbed some peaches. And we're out in the parking lot, and my grandpa, I guess, couldn't wait, and he bit into the peach, and you said, oh, gee, and out comes half his front tooth with the peach. It got stuck in the seed. And that in itself was pretty hilarious. But Grandpa, being a pretty stubborn guy, he didn't want to go to the dentist somewhere to get it fixed. So they put their 3 heads together and came with the bright idea to just go get some Gorilla Glue and just glue the tooth back in there. And that's by far the best memory that comes to my head when I think of my grandpa. So Someone else can go next.
I actually have another poker memory, Grandpa. I think that he got a little tired of winning against the older cousins because whenever I played poker with Grandpa, if he got tired of playing, he'd go all in. He'd go all in against me, and he rarely had a good hand when he decided to go all in. But I think it's fitting because he's one of the greatest men I knew, and he went all in on his life. I mean, the amount of stuff he's done in his lifetime, I mean, I have a hard time imagining how he even got around to all of it. And I mean, I'm lucky I got to spend all of my life in Alaska. I never went more than a few weeks without seeing him for most of my life. So seeing all these people that I have never met or have met me and I don't remember that he's impacted, I mean, it just blows my mind how one man could have such a big impact on, you know, the community. Time when me and Caden, we were in a phase where we really liked to dig, as boys do. And Grandpa thought it'd be a good idea to send us on a hunt for some gold. So he got some rocks about this big, and he spray painted them gold, and he buried them back here. He told us, "There's some gold in our backyard. You guys should go dig for it." We spent at least a full day digging back there till we found a big old gold nugget this big, and for about a day at least, we believed that was real gold before he let us realize it was just a rock.
Give thanks for my grandfather. I haven't spent much time here recently, but when I was a kid growing up, he made Alaska the best place on earth for me, and really grateful for all the values that my grandmother and him passed on in a short amount of time. Like, we're not allowed to say I'm bored here, but that's a good thing, because then you find other things to do, like search for gold nuggets. And the cotton candy, of course, is also awesome for children and adults alike. And something grandfather helped me with was to break out of a shell of shyness and to go up to people and offer them cotton candy for $5. But I find it makes it easier when you're a child and you're so adorable and you're like, here's some money, or here's some cotton candy. Yeah, so I also want to say I'm grateful to spend some of the last moments with him together in Arizona and to, you know, help out there. And I just, something that Grandpa said that was really short that I think I see a lot in him that makes me admire him is how it's been said before, but just how caring he was and how he noticed the little things. And so there was a moment where he was talking to my mother and he said, "Anne, you always notice the little things," because she watches animals and she talks about birds, and it was something that nobody really picked up on, and he just looked at her in the eyes and was like, you know, you see things that other people do not. And it's not just with her, but I think he has a way with touching everybody's hearts with his words, and in an effective and powerful way. So I have a lot to attribute to him in a short amount of time spent with him, and I'd say that's a pretty good thing. So if anybody else would like to take the microphone, I just want to say thank you all. Also, I want to say, like, family is the most important thing. I'm just so grateful and overwhelmed with how I feel seeing everybody again, and like just the amount of care that's gone into each and every one of us because of who our grandparents are and our parents. So it's a high calling to live up to, you know? I see everybody gathered here, I'm like, wow, praise God. Anybody else?
My family on my dad's side, which is just as large as this family. Both families have been created by something so beautiful, and like my brother said, looking around, it's like, how, like, it's beautiful. How could I live up to something like that? He just built such a legacy, and you know, it's just beautiful. And it's almost like powerful just knowing, like, I gotta do something. this is just the most beautiful thing you can see, really. Two people have made something so beautiful. And it's just, man, I just feel, I guess, empowered now. This is my first time up in like 10 years, and seeing the family that I haven't seen forever, it's been really sweet and awesome. And yeah, just excited for the future and spending time with you guys, seeing you guys around more, I suppose. And my grandpa was such a good guy. That's what I remember. Coming up to Alaska during the summer to see Grandma and Grandpa and play at this house. It's always something just magical. It was just an easy time. We got away from our house and we got to play in the wilderness with all of our friends and family. And it was just a really special time. And just poker. Just a special time. He was a good guy. That's what I can remember. And I was grateful to be in Arizona and see him as well. He did a lot, and I want to amount to that, I suppose. And I had time for everybody too. Like everybody's saying, we all have something so special. How do you make so much time? Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know, but he did it, and it's proof that you can do it, and I can do it, I suppose. And he built something really beautiful, and I would like to do the same as him.
I guess going over to the grandparents' house over here, there was never a dull moment. Paul was always joking around, no matter what it was. There was never a serious moment, really. I remember too much with him. He always coming up with some slick thing to say to you if you walk in with Texas A&M hoodie on. He's gonna, what are you wearing that for? And he's just a funny guy, even up to the end. I mean, this time in Arizona, he was just always laughing, and he was trying to tell jokes 24/7. He's always trying to just make things fun for you. I think the best thing at the end is he just wanted some food to eat, and he didn't want to be tampered with. Karen and Mary over there trying to scoop in extra protein and all sorts of stuff in there, and he loved to eat, man, and he was just a great guy to be with, no matter what you did. He always made you feel special. I was kind of disappointed when I got here. We always taught maybe 70 grandkids. I guess it's only closer to 40, but still, it's impressive when Christmas rolls around and your grandparents send you a gift. I mean, there's 40 grandkids and 22 aunts and uncles over here, and to still get a gift from those grandparents, it was a real treat to know that they thought about you and that they cared enough to do something like that, whether it was hats knitted by grandma or a $20 bill in the mail. So they're really special, and I just thank God for both of them. Being here in the summertime and stuff like that, if we weren't fishing, we were at the grandparents' house. And I remember sitting in the living room while Grandpa's watching Fox News. And by watching, I mean he was sleeping in his couch, and you would try and change the channel, and he'd wake up and, hey, I was watching that. And you're like, okay, I'll change it back to Fox News. Yeah, going off what Ben said about the word bored was not allowed to be used in this household. I remember the last time we said we were bored, he said, there's some wood up there and some nails. Go build yourself a fort. And we built the fort, all of us cousins. The one that I know Andrew and Jen and them built when they were up here fell down, and then what happened when they left? We built another one, just 3 stories instead of 2. Bigger and, well, I wouldn't say sturdier, but okay.
My very first memory of them was we got to the house. I guess it was my first memory, but whenever we first moved to Alaska, it was just me, Dad, my dad's college friend, Barry. So I was 8 years old, spent a whole entire week with these 2 college buddies driving across the country, just me and them. And we get to the house, and I was super hungry, thirsty, whatever, and the very first thing is Grandpa offered me chocolate milk. And I, at the time, I was like, whatever, sure, chocolate milk, that's cool. And from that day, that was the best chocolate milk I have ever had. And there'll just be random days I'll remember that. I just get a hankering for chocolate milk. And if you know me, I drink chocolate milk religiously. And that's where it all started, and that's my greatest memory of Grandpa that he has passed on to me, that carried me literally every day.
So I was always the baby of the family, and I was only here from 12 days old to about 5 years. I don't remember much at all. I just remember always going camping with my aunts and always seeing them around.
All right, so Bug really liked camping. And anything else you like to say? She's a little emotional, but it's all good. She gets it from her dad, as we all can see today. Which I think that's been the best part. You know, as Fishers, down back home, I'm like, oh, like I'm Madison Fisher, big ego, big head, you know, step back, hot-headed. It's a thing. Obviously, we're all very spread out, so we don't know everything. But it's nice being here, like, it's obviously not the happiest time, but just seeing like all the aunts and uncles just come together, and like I'm really like shocked at what Grandpa, I guess, said. Obviously, I wasn't there, about like not hugging enough. It's nice to see you guys hugging and being friends and like showing that love like you guys have always had, but as Fishers, you're very hard-headed, very independent, stubborn, all the things that are bad, but they're actually pretty darn good. Yeah, it's just nice having the whole family together and being a family.
This is the first time I've been up here in, third time I've been up here, but the first time for a long time that I've been up here in about 12 years. And it's awesome to see everybody. I don't know the last time that we've had everybody in one place. It's been a very long time. What? Okay, sorry. A lot of people have asked me like if I know what my grandpa has accomplished. He accomplished a lot of things, and a lot of that stuff was before we were born, and it's amazing stuff. It's great. That's not the grandpa I remember. I remember the grandpa that brought everybody together, got everybody up here doing the cotton candy and the kettle corn, and going to the fairs and selling everything at the parades. I mean, that was amazing. He always had stuff for us to do. Like you guys said, bored was not a word that we used, and that was because he prevented it. I mean, he had the electric skateboards and the mini motorcycles. We have a picture of Mike riding around on a mini chopper right here with the tree that used to be here in the yard. There was just always stuff to do, and when you weren't doing stuff, you were helping him deliver pool tabs. That was great. And then even when we weren't hanging out the house, we were clamming, and we'd bring the clams back, and everybody'd be sitting out on the porch cleaning clams. It was awesome. Obviously we were gone a lot doing the fishing and all that, but coming home and everybody was hanging out, all the cousins, and we never had a period of time where we felt alone up here or bored. It's been great. I can't say enough good things about him. I miss him. So, anybody else?
This is really short, but it's come up a lot since I've been here. I just kind of remembered me and Grandpa both share a thing for food. We both really like food, and I eat a lot. I eat loads all the time. And I remember just one time when we were in Arizona, Grandpa said, "Oh, she's a big eater." And the amount of times I've heard that phrase from my parents and from everybody else since he said that the one time has just been so much. And here he always makes these salads. I don't know if any of you remember his salads that he used to make with like all these olives and like meat, like lunch meat and cheese chopped up in it. But am I like yelling?
No.
Okay.
I remember the canned mushrooms.
Oh yes, the mushrooms. I don't like mushrooms. But Yeah, I'm gonna miss the salads. That's all.
Important thing that I'll take away is his love of family. Now I have a reason to get my dad on a roller coaster, so there's that. But no, he was a great man, and when we found out that he had passed away, I had a lot of people from the community reach out to me, and that just proved to me what a big impact he's made on the community, not just our family. But as far as food stories, since we all have one, I remember every summer there was a day he would come home, and out of the back of his car he would pull out a case of cherries. Not a bag of cherries, not a couple things of a case of cherries. And we would all go out on the front deck, and all the cousins, and just eating cherries on the front deck, spitting the seeds in the grass. But when we had found out, I told my husband, I was like, can we go buy a bag of cherries? Like, it's not even cherry season, but I think we need to go have a bag of cherries. But really nice to see is his entrepreneurial spirit. I don't know if you guys have checked out the Coke stand, but even the young generation has added their own tip jars, and I think that speaks words to all the business sense that he's taught us. So
Just looking around, and his legacy is amazing. All of us here from so far away coming together, it's truly amazing. I love it. I love hearing everybody's different version of the stories and how they happen. That's always fun, but it's super sweet, and oh my goodness. He will definitely be missed, and I'm so glad that everybody was able to come out and share just their personal stories about him. It was so sweet. Anybody?
Yes. So I'm Andrew. I'm the second oldest, oldest male child. Got to take pride somewhere. So no, honestly, like most of my childhood up here was as a child. So, and besides that, I have a horrible memory to begin with. I barely remember past yesterday. But the one thing I do remember about Grandpa was his smile. That sounds really cheesy, I know. But when I think of the Fischer family in general, I think of like all those negative words they could say, but I think of it as a positive sense. Yes, we're stubborn. Yes, we're pig-headed, all that good stuff. But that's what makes us great as Fischers. It's the one thing that you can't change about you is your family. And I think that's what I'm most proud of. Even though I have met like half of you before, I never once doubted that you guys were going to be great. The one thing about the Fischer family is that we are entrepreneurial. We are strong-spirited, to say the least. But the one thing that I think with Grandpa that everything had in common here was there's no negative. Everybody has their negative parts, but the memories that we bring with us are all positive. Grandpa was strong spirit. He was a happy spirit. And I think the one thing we need to all take away is how do we carry that forward? And it's not necessarily even the memory, it's the built-in morals and values that we bring to our children going forward and how we can build on that. As we all know, many of us talked about how we want to be strong and happy like him, be entrepreneurs. But how do we get that past the next generation and on in order to remember him long-term versus the short? For me personally, I know I spent a lot of time away from you guys, and I apologize for that ahead of time. It's good to catch up with you all, but I hope that going forward, even though we all kind of had our own strands that went different directions, that we can kind of help bring each other back together, so that we can have that long-lasting spirit of the Fischer family, because that's the one thing I can honestly say that I'm proud of is being a Fischer, and I think that all of you can say the same thing, that Fischer blood runs strong, and I think we can carry that going forward. So thank you to everybody ahead of time for when I get to meet you finally. Thank you. Thank you for being accepting for my absence for the longest time as well. But I think that in summary, we're all Fischers, and I'm glad to be part of this family. So thank you.
Hi.
Is this the song and dance portion of our show?
No. I know I haven't been up here for like since I was 6 months old. It's a long time ago. And I knew Grandpa when he was in Arizona. And one of my favorite stories from him is when we went to a guitar center one time. And I can play instruments, so I wanted to show him how I could play the piano. But he walked into the guitar center, he was so amazed at how there's walls of guitars. He's like, look at all these drum sets, oh my god. And Jackson, he can play the drums. And so he he was like bragging to all the people in Guitar Center, even the people who work there. He's like, "This is my grandson. He can play the drums, and watch him." And so they're all watching him, and then and he was like a kid in a candy store. He was so happy to see all the people working there and everyone playing guitars and all the expensive things. And I loved how he just, like, he would never seen anything like that before, and it was really good to see that he could be like a child again. I don't know, but yeah, that's my story.
Grandpa was, again, for every single one of us, right? All he ever cared about was seeing us that we were happy together and enjoying the time that we spent together. And some of the best memories I have where no matter what you would do, as long as you were with him, you would always win, no matter what. And he would always make it seem like you straight up fairly beat him in anything that you were doing. For example, whenever we'd play poker, you'd be sitting there betting against him and you would be dropping major hints like, could you beat a royal flush? Which anybody who doesn't know poker is one of the highest hands or actually royal flush is the highest hand that you can have. Nothing beats it. So the one time I've ever had a royal flush in my life, have it in my hand, and I'm hinting to my grandfather, "What you got, man? Can you beat this? Can you beat this?" And straight face looks at you and is like, "Well, we'll find out." Go through the whole game of betting. He lays down, I think it was an ace high. Had absolutely nothing. And when you look at him with this grin, it's like, "Yeah, I beat him." And he looks at you and he goes, "Oh, I thought there were 3 more aces out there. I thought I had 4. And you just look at him, you're just like, "Sure." Thanks for your money. The other one is, when I was really little, it seems pretty cheesy, but he'd blow my mind because he'd come out here with this little finger trick. He was like, "I can take off my finger." And you're like, "No, you can't." So he sits there and does that little, oh wait, I can't do it with that thumb. There we go, this little number. And he pulls it off. And he goes, "Oh, I pulled it off." And as a kid, again, you're not thinking about it. You're just like, "Holy crap, he just took his finger off." And then he's just like, "Oh, what's that over there?" You look real quick and all of a sudden it's back on. He's like, my grandpa's a magician. But he would do these little things that, as you're growing up, you don't really think about until you look back on it. It's like, he went out of his way just to make you happy, make you laugh, or make you smile. And I think that's who he was as a person. He just wanted everybody to be happy, no matter where you were. And again, I think that's what we're all going to take back with us, is his unforgiving love and just his dying need to see everybody happy and smiling around him.
As a spouse, there should be some representation because, well, so, oh God, married into the Fischer family is terrifying. Okay, for starters, well, everything about how I was raised is pretty different from this family. Much smaller, and there's no entrepreneurialism at all, and I married the baby of the bunch, so there's a lot going on before I got here, and but I never once felt not accepted. So, I just love being in your home. I love how you can have 1 million people in your tiny house and never you just are calm. You and Grandpa, there's always room at the table for more. We lived with you for 9 months with 4 kids in that little house while we were building. You were so gracious. And I'm thankful for the legacy that he passed on even though when we got married, you fill up our car with kettle corn and wanted us to sell it, and that was like, I can't sell stuff at my wedding, what the heck? Selling has not been a strong suit for me, and but I've really grown into it, you know, and now I got my kids doing it, and I love it. I love that we get to go to festivals and fairs, and they get to sit there and greet people and smile, and you get to see other people smiling when they are buying cotton candy, and I do love it. So, you know, I think there was lots of thoughts that went through my head that I wanted to share, but I'm really bad at this, and I appreciate just how much love and acceptance there is for people in this family, and thank you for welcoming me and all my little rat bastards. Okay.
Do you remember the time when it was a rainy day and you guys were bored and it wasn't allowed, and so he gave you guys all a big box of pull tabs, and you guys were scratching them? You remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when I was telling him about when I was in Taekwondo, and he asked what color belt I had, and I can't remember what I had at the time. It was yellow or orange or something like that. And said, yeah, well, I got a black belt. He just had his normal belt on. I remember he was always a jokester.
But you guys were all so excited, you grandkids, and I just sat there and watched, because you were making all these big dreams of what you were going to do with the money that you would do with the scratch tickets when you all got them done. The pull case, you were bummed it was only 50 cents you made. You were going to Disneyland. Right. Remember that one? No, let's go to Hawaii. So, any other good memories you have?
Geez, I remember he was always trying to get at your candy. He never would leave your candy alone. But no, I'm trying to think, but I had to think about it.
You remember him when you were little, taking the shaving cream bottle and spraying it in your mouth, and you wouldn't quit, and it would just get everywhere?
No, I don't remember that.
Oh, I remember it. He did it to all you, my boys. Yeah, he loved that one. The bottle of shaving cream, Cool Whip. The Cool Whip bottle.
Oh, the Cool Whip, maybe.
Yeah. It was a Cool Whip. See, I'm getting old. Any other good things?
Good thing. He was just a good person all around. He was fun to be around. He was always joking. It was always a good time. But as far as specific memories right now, can't really think of anything too much.
Okay.
You at the memorial right now?
Yeah, we're all going around. We're all going around saying we're done with the service and we're at the house now with memories. Can you see everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if it was, beforehand or afterwards or.
You're on the air.
What are you guys doing? You guys eating something?
We're listening to you. We're listening to you.
Yeah, you're on the speaker, man.
Oh, shoot. I can hear me. Oh, cool. Well, hi, everyone.
You're the only one that didn't make it, but I thought we'd try to get you on so he could hear from all the grandkids.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I can't really see everybody individually, but I'm up there in spirit.
Okay. All right.
Who's holding my phone?
Hi. Trying to think what else.
I've been trying to reach you for a couple days, so now it makes sense. But I love you.
I love you too.
Love all you guys.
Stay healthy.
Oh, I will. I'm just
sitting here. They took one of the drains out. I was hoping that they were going to take the other one out.
Okay, we'll let you go. Need someone to give me, I have 3/4 in my hand, or how did I do it? I'll give you 3/4 if you give me a dollar. How did I do that? When the kids were learning money, he would give them like 5 pennies, and he would say, I would trade you 5 pennies for, he would have the 5 pennies in his hand, and Caden would have $1, and Grandpa would say, I'll give you my 5 pennies for your $1. And the kids are like, yeah, 5's more than 1. He would do that a lot with the kids, is he'd have money in his hands and try and up the kids and cheat them out of their money. And the kids would say, yeah, we'll do that. We're like, no, don't do that. So he started teaching them the value of their money at a very young age with those little pennies that he would have in his hands.
I do have one memory that hasn't been talked about, and one day we were going through Grandpa's bedroom, or like through his house, just to clean it up a little bit and clean it out, and I don't know how many boxes or like jars of just loose change that we found in that house, but the one bucket was a Folgers coffee can that he just hid around the house, and he told me if I counted it, I could have it. And I spent a good 2 hours just counting out all the like pennies on the floor. I think it ended up being like 20 bucks, but it took me, and it definitely taught me that like, I don't know how to say it, but it taught me that you get paid for your time, like, and just, yeah.
Good job.